A self-made millionaire who once worked the factory floor notices a strange yet remarkable worker at one of his plants. Driven by instinct and curiosity, he takes a job undercover as a regular laborer, only to discover a man whose quiet actions are holding the entire operation together. And when he finally realizes who this man truly is, everything changes. Not a single late clock-in. No reported incidents. No complaints. Nathaniel Rourke frowned at the line buried halfway down the page, a single asterisk beside it. It wasn't even in the main report. It was a footnote, added manually by someone in HR, typed in a different font. Temp worker ID number 4369. No issues logged. However, odd pattern of unreported equipment fixes and off-the-clock hours. Suggest internal review. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair. Leather creaked. The windows behind him stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a skyline view of the city he used to only dream about when he was 23 and sleeping on a thin mat in a storage closet, knees curled to his chest. He didn't usually read this deep into HR documents. These days, he trusted the systems, he'd built them to run on their own. And they did. The warehouse ran on schedules, logistics, algorithms. That was the point. But that note. Odd pattern. He tapped the edge of the page with his pen. Not illegal, not disruptive. Just strange. Subtle, quiet things, repairs not logged, work done after hours. Invisible labor. No credit. It shouldn't have bothered him. But it did. That night, in the silence of his penthouse kitchen, one he rarely cooked in, Nathaniel opened his laptop and pulled up the full employee file. ID number 4369, Miguel B. Ramirez. Age 42. Position, temporary warehouse support. No formal complaints. No disciplinary notes. No commendations either. He'd been there 7 months. No one mentioned him at meetings. Just another name on a rotating list of temps. Yet, every warehouse section Miguel worked in had slightly higher safety scores. Fewer equipment breakdowns. Faster order processing. No one had connected it, but Nathaniel saw the pattern now. He sat back and exhaled slowly. This wasn't something you could ask in a meeting. You couldn't call someone into your office and say, "Tell me how you're quietly keeping this whole damn place from falling apart." No. If he wanted to understand what was really happening, he'd have to see it himself. 2 weeks later, nobody recognized him. The beard helped. So did the flannel shirts from Walmart, the steel-toe boots that gave him blisters the first 2 days, and the name tag. Matt Rhodes. He even added a slight Midwest drawl when he introduced himself. Born in Ohio, he said. Been in construction a while, but work dried up. Just trying to make ends meet. No one questioned it. In a place where people clocked in half asleep and clocked out sore, a new face didn't matter much. The warehouse buzzed with noise and motion, pallet jacks screeching, forklifts beeping in reverse, tape guns tearing. Rows of shelves stretched like steel canyons, stacked with boxes, blinking scanners, and the occasional muffled curse when something fell or jammed. Matt, didn't last long the first day. His hands blistered. His back screamed. Every bone in his body reminded him that he hadn't lifted a 30-pound box in a decade. But he didn't quit. That wasn't his style. And on the 3rd day, he noticed him. A man with quiet eyes. A calm walk. No rush. No wasted movements. Miguel Ramirez. Miguel didn't speak much. He wore the same faded hoodie every day. Old boots. No music, no phone, no earbuds. Just work. Focused, steady, methodical. But then Nathaniel saw it. A forklift sputtering. A motor that should have been called in. Miguel rolled up his sleeves, cracked open the casing, and, without telling anyone, fixed it. A wire here. A fuse replaced. Smooth hum again. Later, a spilled box of bolts near one of the ladders. Miguel stayed after shift to sweep them up, even though it wasn't his section. Quiet. Alone. Every time, Nathaniel wanted to say something. Ask why. But Miguel didn't do it for praise. He didn't look around after helping. No chest puffed. No glance toward the cameras. He just moved on. Like it was normal. Like it was his job, even though technically it wasn't. And that's when it hit Nathaniel. This man wasn't working for the paycheck. He was working for the principle of the thing. At night, Nathaniel couldn't sleep. He thought about the millions they spent on efficiency software. On consultants. On employee morale reports. He thought about the plaques in his office, the mission statements, the slick videos about company values. And then he thought of Miguel. Sweeping boats off a floor at 9:47 p.m., after everyone else had gone home. No applause. No paycheck bump. Just quiet dignity. And for the first time in a long while, Nathaniel didn't feel proud of what he built. He felt ashamed he hadn't noticed sooner. It was a Wednesday when Nathaniel finally spoke to him. The shift had ended an hour ago. Most of the crew had already peeled off, grabbing their bags, swiping their cards, heading for late dinners or the slow crawl of home. Fluorescent lights buzzed above the empty aisles. The air smelled like cardboard, plastic wrap, and the lingering ache of motion. Nathaniel lingered, pretending to rest on a crate near Section 9B. His arms ached. His shirt clung to his back. The blisters on his palms had torn 2 days ago, raw, pulsing little reminders of how far removed he'd become from this world. And then came Miguel. Quiet footsteps. Hoodie sleeves pushed up. A slow, steady walk like the shift hadn't drained him at all. He passed Nathaniel without a word, crouched beside a loading belt, and began adjusting something underneath it, delicate movements with a wrench that looked older than both of them. "You always stay this late?" Nathaniel asked, trying to keep his voice light. Miguel didn't look up. Just tightened something, tested a gear with his fingers. "Only when something's broken," he said. Nathaniel squinted. "Did someone ask you to fix that?" "No." Miguel gave the belt a spin. "It moves smoother now. But if I don't, someone'll trip on it tomorrow." He stood slowly, wiped his hands on a rag pulled from his back pocket, and gave Nathaniel a once-over. Not suspicious. Just assessing. "You knew?" "Yeah," Nathaniel said, reaching for the lie he'd rehearsed. "Name's Matt. Week 3. Miguel nodded once. "You're not bad. Careful with the way you stack pallets, though. You lean too much to the left. That'll get someone hurt." And then he turned to go. That was it. The next day, Nathaniel brought 2 coffees. He found Miguel before the shift and handed one over wordlessly. Miguel glanced at it, then at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Nathaniel said. "Just seemed like the kind of morning where black coffee makes things less miserable." A pause. Then a small nod. Acceptance. They drank in silence. It became a rhythm. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathaniel watched. Miguel worked like he owed the place a debt, but not to the company. Not to a name on the building. He worked like the building itself mattered. Like the people who walked through it each day deserved something safe, something functional, something fair. He didn't talk about himself. Not much. But in the small pockets of quiet between shifts and spills and forklifts, Nathaniel learned. Miguel had a daughter. 13. Smart. Loved astronomy. His wife passed away 5 years ago. He didn't complain. Ever. One night, when the others had clocked out and the lights were dimming, Miguel was on his knees replacing a cracked tile near the main stairwell. It was the kind of thing most people would step over for weeks. But not him. Nathaniel watched him for a long moment. Then sat down beside him. "You ever think of applying for a supervisor position?" Miguel's hands paused. "I'm a temp. They hire temps sometimes." "Not me," Miguel said with a strange calm. "Not when I don't play the game." "What game?" Miguel met his eyes then, really looked at him. And Nathaniel felt, for a flicker of a second, like the mask of Matt had slipped. "The one where you pretend not to see what's broken," Miguel said. "Where you nod at the right people and look away from the wrong problems." Nathaniel couldn't respond. Miguel went back to the tile. That night, in the quiet of his high-rise, Nathaniel sat in the dark. Laptop closed. Whiskey untouched. He didn't like what he saw when he thought about Miguel's words. He had built this company from nothing. A single borrowed van. Loading boxes himself at 4 a.m., calling clients from a burner phone, eating instant noodles in a room that smelled like mildew. He'd been Miguel once. But somewhere along the way, he'd started mistaking clean spreadsheets and steady profits for success. He stopped looking at the floor tiles, the loose wires, the men and women keeping it all upright without a single line in a quarterly report. 2 days later, Miguel didn't show up. No message. No call. His badge didn't ping the clock-in system. Nathaniel, Matt, asked around casually. One of the forklift guys shrugged. He was coughing bad yesterday. Might be out sick. But Miguel didn't come back the next day either. Or the day after that. And by Monday, a different name was on the schedule in his place. No one said a word. Nathaniel called HR that afternoon. Still under the name Matt Rhodes, he asked, just curious, about temp worker number 4369. Miguel B. Ramirez. The voice on the other end sounded young, uncertain. Looks like his contract wasn't renewed. I don't have all the notes here, but looks like standard performance flag. Performance? Nathaniel said, too sharp. Yeah, it says something about failure to log extra hours. Lack of clarity on duties. Apparently, he was repairing machinery off protocol. Off protocol? It's a liability issue, the voice said, reciting it like a line from a manual. Technically, temps aren't authorized for mechanical adjustments. Nathaniel sat there silent. He wanted to scream, to curse, to fire someone. But instead, he said, "Thanks." Then hung up. He called in the next day. Not as Matt, as Nathaniel Rourke. And by 9 a.m., he was in a boardroom with the senior HR manager, 2 supervisors, and a legal rep who seemed deeply uncomfortable. He slid Miguel's file across the table. "Fix this," Nathaniel said. "And before you ask, no, I don't want it swept under some new policy or hidden in the next employee spotlight video. I want him back. With full-time pay. Benefits. A team." The HR manager blinked. "Sir, we have procedures." "Then change them." He stood. Looked each of them in the eye. "There are invisible gears in this company," he said quietly. "People you never see. People who keep things running because they believe in what they do. We lost one of them. That won't happen again." That evening, he found an old number. He wasn't even sure it would work. But he dialed. A young girl answered. "Hello?" Nathaniel cleared his throat. "Hi. This is Matt. I worked with your dad at the warehouse." The girl hesitated. "Oh. He's not here right now. Would you tell him something for me?" "Okay. Tell him, the belt's still running smooth. But we need him back." She didn't say anything at first. Then, "I'll tell him." And just before the line clicked off, she added, soft as a whisper, "He'll be glad someone noticed." He came back on a Tuesday. No fanfare. No announcement. Just the same battered boots, the same faded hoodie, the same lunch wrapped in aluminum foil. Miguel Ramirez clocked in at 6:58 a.m. like he had never left. Nathaniel watched from a distance. There was a brief pause at the timecard machine. Miguel glanced around, as if checking for the catch, the fine print. Then his fingers hovered above the green button and he tapped in. The click of it sounded louder than usual. A few coworkers nodded at him. One muttered, "Hey man," without breaking stride. No one asked why he was gone. No one said welcome back. But Nathaniel noticed a shift in the room. A strange, unspoken realignment. Like something essential had been returned to its socket. The machine was running again. Not the conveyor belts. The company. Miguel didn't talk about it. Not the days he missed, not the phone call from HR, not the sudden offer for a full-time position with benefits and back pay. He worked the same as before, careful, quiet, thorough. But Nathaniel could see the difference now. So could others. Supervisors started asking him questions. Small ones at first. Then more. Hey Miguel, how'd you fix that gear before? Can you look at Section 4's rollers again? Think we need a safety check on the south stairwell? For years, the man had gone unseen. Now, eyes followed him, not with suspicion but respect. And Nathaniel found himself changed. Not just in thought. In presence. He still worked as Matt. Still loaded boxes, swept the aisles, ran inventory. But he also started asking questions too. What do you need out here that you're not getting? What's the worst part of your shift? What would make this job feel fair? And people told him. Because Matt wasn't a suit. He wasn't a clipboard or a quarterly check-in. He was a guy with cracked knuckles and the same steel-toe boots. He was one of them. They didn't know he was their boss. But he was finally learning how to be one again. By the end of the second week, Miguel approached him during break. They sat on a loading dock, feet dangling above the asphalt. Sunlight spilled across the cracked pavement. In the distance, trucks rumbled in and out like clockwork. You're not like the others, Miguel said, sipping from a thermos. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. How do you mean? You asked the right kind of questions. Most guys just want to clock out. Nathaniel shrugged. Guess I'm just built different. Miguel looked at him for a moment, long enough that Nathaniel felt the air stretch. You ever run a team before? Miguel asked. The question caught Nathaniel off guard. It wasn't a challenge. It was an invitation. A few times, Nathaniel said carefully. Why? Miguel nodded, eyes back on the parking lot. Because if you ever wanted to lead here, for real, you might be the only one I'd follow. The next day, Nathaniel met with HR again. He dropped the Matt identity. Told them who he really was. Shock followed, of course. One exec blurted. You were working in the warehouse? Like undercover? I was working, Nathaniel replied simply. That's all. They scrambled to apologize, to explain. But he cut them off with a list of changes. A new hazard reporting system, anonymous, fast, direct to leadership. Increased pay for after-hours maintenance and emergency fixes. A mentorship program for temp workers, designed and led by current floor workers. And finally, promotions based on actions, not paperwork. And at the bottom of that list, appoint Miguel B. Ramirez as head of safety operations. He doesn't have a formal degree, one of the supervisors said, scanning the page. He has something better, Nathaniel replied. Trust. The day Miguel was told about the position, he didn't say anything for a long time. They sat across from each other in a small office off the warehouse floor. Nathaniel had pulled off the flannel and the fake name. He wore a plain button-down now. No tie. Just truth. So you're the one who pulled the strings, Miguel said finally. Nathaniel nodded. Wasn't the plan, honestly. I just wanted to understand. And then, I couldn't not do something. Miguel studied him. Why me? Because you fixed what others ignored. You did the work when no one was watching. And because the day you didn't show up, everything felt off. Miguel leaned back in his chair. I didn't do it for recognition. I know, Nathaniel said. That's exactly why it matters. Silence stretched between them, soft and full. Then Miguel smiled. Just a little. Head of safety operations, huh? You'll get your own budget. A team. Say in hiring. And yes, better boots. That made Miguel laugh, low and honest. You think the others listen to me? They already are, Nathaniel said. They just don't know it yet. Later that week, Nathaniel stood at the edge of the floor, watching Miguel speak to a small circle of workers. It was subtle, no grand speech. Just pointing out frayed cords, loose shelving, areas to flag for audit. His tone wasn't bossy. It was collaborative. People leaned in when he talked. Nathaniel stood there quietly, hands in his pockets, letting the noise wash over him, the hum of industry, the chatter of hands and hearts at work. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man protecting a castle from the top of the tower. He felt like a builder again. A man who'd finally come back down to the ground floor. The first time Miguel stood in front of a room and spoke, his voice nearly cracked. Not because he was afraid, he wasn't that kind of man, but because he could feel, with sudden and strange weight, that people were actually listening. The room wasn't full of executives. No board members. No PowerPoint slides or catered coffee. Just 30 warehouse workers, temp and full-time, rookies and veterans, seated on plastic folding chairs, elbows on knees, eyes tired but curious. Miguel cleared his throat, looked down once at the notepad he'd barely used, and said, "I don't care what your title is. If you see something broken, report it. Fix it if you can. And if someone tells you it's not your job, tell them it's not your fault if a box falls on someone's head." A soft laugh rippled through the room. He relaxed a little. "The company finally gave us tools," he continued. "Use them. The new form is anonymous. You don't need permission. And if you think it won't matter, think again. I'll read every one." Someone raised a hand. "And what if it's your name on the form?" Miguel smiled. "Then I guess I'll fix what I messed up." Nathaniel watched from the back. Unseen. Unnecessary. And that was exactly the point. He could feel the difference now, not in policy, but in posture. The way the workers sat a little straighter. The way people spoke up. The small miracle of someone like Miguel standing at the front, not out of ego, but out of responsibility. He'd built a company. But now, at last, he was watching a culture begin to form. And it didn't need to revolve around him anymore. After the meeting, he walked the floor with a clipboard, not because he needed it, but because people talked more when they thought you were just another guy doing a checklist. He paused by a woman stacking outbound pallets. She had a neon pink bandana and a t-shirt that read, "Coffee first, questions never." "You were in the meeting?" Nathaniel asked. She didn't stop moving. "Yup. What did you think?" She shrugged. "About time someone up there stopped talking like a robot." "Meaning?" "Meaning," she said, straightening up and brushing her hands on her jeans. "When Miguel talks, he sounds like us. Doesn't try to make it all pretty. Just tells the truth." Nathaniel nodded. "And that works for you?" She squinted at him, then said, "You new to management?" "In a way," he replied, smiling faintly. Later that afternoon, he met with Clara, head of HR, behind closed doors. She sat at the conference table with her usual perfect posture and navy pantsuit. She'd worked for him for 8 years. Kept things clean. Efficient. Impersonal. "We've processed the changes you requested," she said. "Miguel's officially salaried. Full benefits. Title cleared. He's also submitted 3 internal safety proposals." Nathaniel nodded. "Good. Approve them." Clara hesitated. "He's pushing for mandatory mechanical training for temps. That's a cost increase. Also, insurance may push back if temps start operating beyond their scope. Then adjust the insurance. It's not that simple." "It is now." Clara exhaled sharply through her nose. "Nathaniel, I need to ask. Are you planning to stay in this hands-on role? Or was this a one-time experiment?" He looked out the window, where the warehouse sprawled like a living, breathing engine. "I'm not stepping back into the tower," he said. "Not all the way." Clara folded her hands. "You're the founder. The board expects vision, not floor walks." Nathaniel met her eyes. "Vision," he said slowly, "means seeing what no one else will. I didn't start this company to look down from a penthouse. I started it so people like Miguel would never be invisible." Word spread fast. Within 3 weeks, warehouse teams in 2 other locations had started asking, "Do we get someone like Miguel?" And Nathaniel, for the first time, began forming what he called the shadow line. Unlisted in public documents. Unbranded in corporate decks. It was a network of internal leaders, custodians, forklift operators, inventory clerks, nominated by peers, trained on the floor, empowered without PR. No titles. Just impact. The idea? Give the floor a voice that could bypass everything else. One afternoon, Nathaniel caught Miguel finishing a phone call near the loading dock. His daughter, probably. His face had that softness it only got when he talked about her. She win that science fair yet? Nathaniel asked. Miguel smiled. Second place. Lost to a kid with a volcano. Tough loss. Yeah, but her solar system actually rotated. Kids going places. Nathaniel nodded. Like her dad. Miguel looked at him. You really think this'll last? All these changes? I don't know, Nathaniel said honestly. Depends who carries them forward. Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You ever wonder why people don't speak up more? All the time. It's not fear, Miguel said. It's fatigue. When you've been ignored long enough, silence starts to feel like self-defense. Nathaniel swallowed. I want to fix that. Miguel looked at him, steadier than ever. Then you'd better keep listening. Because silence doesn't break on its own. That night, Nathaniel walked the warehouse one last time before heading out. He passed by the stairwell Miguel once repaired in secret. He ran his hand along the rail. Solid. Safe. In the break room, two temps were laughing over a busted coffee machine that now spat steam like a dragon. Someone had drawn googly eyes on it. He didn't stop them. He stepped out into the parking lot and looked up at the building, lit from inside, glowing against the night like a promise. He'd once dreamed of seeing his name on a skyscraper. Now he dreamed of hearing it whispered on the floor, not as a boss, but as someone who gave a damn. And slowly, quietly, that dream felt bigger. The email came in at 2:17 p.m., dressed in the usual corporate politeness. Concerns regarding safety lead Miguel Ramirez's scope of influence. Subject line sterile. Body colder. Nathaniel read it twice. Then a third time. It wasn't from Clara. It came from one of the regional VPs, Jeff Darrow, a man who wore tailored suits to Zoom calls and used phrases like strategic distancing from lower-level processes. Beneath the jargon, the message was clear. Miguel is making waves. And not everyone wants to swim. Miguel had started holding safety huddles 3 times a week, optional but well-attended. He'd launched a shared whiteboard system so workers could report equipment issues directly. No logins, no permission needed. The whiteboard filled up within a day. The changes were simple. Obvious even. But they created ripples. Supervisors who used to delegate from the break room now had to answer questions from floor workers. Team leads who skimmed reports were suddenly being asked to act on them. Not everyone liked the feeling of accountability creeping in sideways. Especially when it came from a man in a hoodie who didn't ask for a title. Nathaniel met Miguel behind the warehouse after shift. The sun was dipping, casting long shadows across the shipping yard. Miguel leaned against a concrete barrier, arms crossed, a cigarette burning low between his fingers. I heard about the email, he said before Nathaniel could speak. Nathaniel didn't pretend. You're rattling a few cages. Miguel took a drag. Not my goal. But I'm not sorry. They're saying you're overstepping. I'm not. I'm just stepping where no one else has. Nathaniel nodded slowly. I can fight it. Back you up, put out a memo. Miguel looked away. You could. But then it becomes about you. Not the work. Nathaniel was quiet. He hated how right that sounded. Miguel exhaled smoke. You gave me space. Let me build something. Let it speak for itself. And if they try to shut it down? Miguel crushed a cigarette under his boot. Then I'll keep fixing things. Even if they stop putting my name on it. The next morning, Nathaniel stood in the hallway outside Conference Room C, listening. Inside, Jeff Darrow was presenting numbers. Projected margins. Efficiency scores. Warehouse throughput data. All of this. Jeff was saying. Risks being compromised by informal systems and untracked labor. We need consistency, not crusades. Nathaniel stepped in, calm and deliberate. Crusades? He said, his voice slicing through the room. Jeff froze mid-slide. Nathaniel. I didn't expect. I bet you didn't. He walked to the front, unplugged the projector, and set the remote down like a judge laying down a gavel. You know what's inconsistent? He asked. Our understanding of where value comes from. Jeff bristled. We're talking about chain-of-command violations, not. No, Nathaniel said. You're talking about control. I'm talking about leadership. The room went quiet. I spent a month on the floor. He continued. Under a fake name. And the only reason this building didn't eat itself alive was because of one man. One man who fixed what he didn't have to. Who showed up when no one was watching. Someone shifted in their seat. That man now leads our safest, most efficient division, Nathaniel said. And if that threatens you, then maybe you need to ask why. The next week, Miguel's whiteboard went digital. Every warehouse got a copy. Some of them resisted. A few managers dragged their feet, tried to bury the reports in inboxes, let the software stall. But the floor workers didn't. They rallied. Shared screenshots. Sent Miguel photos of fixes made because of his system. And slowly, department by department, the resistance gave way to something bigger than policy. It gave way to pride. Not the corporate kind. Not the logo on the vest or the stockholder message. The kind of pride that comes from knowing you matter in a place that used to forget you existed. One evening, a young temp named Calvin stopped Miguel on the way out. Hey, Mr. Ramirez, he said, nervous, holding something out in both hands. It was a box of old tools, wrenches, wire cutters, a multimeter wrapped in cloth. Rusted, worn down, but cared for. These were my dad's, Calvin said. He was an electrician. He passed last year. Thought maybe you'd get more use out of them than me. Miguel was stunned. You sure? Yeah, Calvin said. You're fixing more than wires around here. Miguel took the box. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then he said softly, So are you, kid. So are you. That night, Nathaniel stood in the far corner of the break room, unseen. Miguel was helping a younger worker troubleshoot a broken barcode scanner. Around them, people laughed. Someone played music on a small speaker. Someone else had brought in a crock pot of chili for no particular reason. There was no announcement. No budget line. No brand strategy. But culture was happening. Real, unshakable, grown from the ground up. And Nathaniel smiled quietly, knowing the most important parts of his company would never make it into a report. They'd live here, in bent wires, whiteboards, passed down tools. And in the quiet revolution that began with one man. Who never asked to be seen. It started with a photograph. A blurry cell phone shot of a whiteboard in Ohio. Scrawled notes. A taped wrench. Underneath. Miguel's list, fix before the floor breaks us. No one from the Ohio team had ever met Miguel. But they'd heard of him. The photo made it into a group chat of warehouse floor leads. Then into a supervisor's Slack channel. Then into Nathaniel's inbox, forwarded with the subject line, This is happening. Thought you'd want to see. He stared at it for a long time. It wasn't corporate approved. It wasn't in a manual. And yet, it might have been the clearest sign of growth he'd ever seen. 3 weeks later, Nathaniel sat in a windowless room in Kansas City. A quarterly strategy review. The kind of meeting where words like streamline, optimize, and consolidate were thrown around like confetti no one wanted to clean up. At the end, he stood. I'm canceling the next phase of automation upgrades, he said, redirecting that budget to local training programs. The room went still. A younger exec, one who hadn't yet learned when to keep quiet, blurted, But automation is more efficient long-term. Labor's unpredictable. Nathaniel looked at him for a moment, then said, So is loyalty. So is trust. Try automating that. Back in Boston, Miguel's office wasn't much. A folding desk. A beat-up chair. A filing cabinet someone had rescued from a dumpster. On the wall, a handwritten quote, taped above the light switch. Fix the small things. They turn into big things when you don't. No one asked where it came from. Most assumed it was his own. Every few days, someone would knock on his door, not a complaint, but a story. A worker from another shift. A kid from receiving. A janitor who saw something no one else did. Miguel would listen. Ask a few questions. Then hand them something. Sometimes it was a wrench. Sometimes a clipboard. Sometimes just permission. And the next day, they'd be on the floor, fixing something that didn't belong to them, but mattered anyway. Nathaniel noticed it in the quarterly numbers. Not in the revenue lines, though those were fine, but in the metrics that usually hid in the footnotes. Turnover rates dropped. Sick days decreased. Near-miss incidents fell off a cliff. And for the first time in company history, warehouse floor feedback outpaced management suggestions. All without a single PR campaign. It wasn't leadership from above. It was dignity from within. One Friday evening, Nathaniel invited Miguel to dinner. Not a boardroom. Not the company cafeteria. Just a quiet corner table at a neighborhood place in South Boston, linoleum floors, chipped coffee mugs, and a waitress who called everyone Han. Miguel hesitated when he saw the place. You sure this is where you meant to meet? Nathaniel grinned. Only place that doesn't make me feel like I'm performing. They sat, ordered black coffee and meatloaf, and talked like old friends. Because they were now. In some strange, earned way. You ever think about how weird this all is? Nathaniel asked, stirring sugar into his cup. Every day, Miguel said. You didn't ask for any of this. Miguel shrugged. I didn't fix things to get noticed. I fixed them because they were broken. Nathaniel looked down at his coffee. I used to be that guy. You still are, Miguel said quietly. You just had to find your way back. When they finished eating, Nathaniel walked Miguel out to the sidewalk. A light rain had started, soft and slow. You know, Nathaniel said, pulling his coat tighter, if we ever franchise this whole thing, your name might end up in a handbook. Miguel laughed. God, I hope not. Nathaniel grinned. No? Miguel shook his head. The second you put something in a handbook, people stop living it. They start performing it. Nathaniel considered that. Then how do we make it stick? Miguel looked out into the misty street. We teach people to care when no one's watching. And we protect the ones who already do. That night, Nathaniel wrote something down for the first time in months. Not an email, not a report. Just a sentence in a leather-bound notebook he kept in his desk drawer, the one he used to carry back when he still made deliveries himself. He wrote, If the company crumbles, I hope the last thing standing is a man like Miguel, holding a wrench and refusing to let it all fall apart. He closed the notebook. And for the first time in a very long time, he felt like he was building something worth leaving behind. The new guy's name was Trey. Barely 20. Hair always tucked under a hoodie, one earbud always in. First generation Haitian American, second week on the floor. Hired as a temp. No prior experience. Kept to himself. Miguel noticed him before anyone else did. He didn't talk much, but his eyes tracked everything. When a cart jammed, he figured out how to unstick it without asking. When a scanner broke, he didn't call it in. He opened the battery case and reset it himself. He moved like someone trying not to be seen. But Miguel had once been that someone. So one afternoon, he walked over, handed Trey a small notepad, and said, Write down every weird thing you notice. Doesn't matter if it's small. Bring it to me at the end of your shift. Trey looked confused, almost suspicious. Why? Miguel shrugged. Because not everyone sees what you see. And we need someone who does. Trey stared at the pad. Then at Miguel. You a manager or something? Something, Miguel said, smiling. Just trust me. By the end of the week, Trey had filled 3 pages. Loose bolts. Faded floor tape. A box of gloves with a defective batch number. And a note. Third step in stairwell squeaks, might be warped. Miguel read every line, then looked up. You want to help fix this stuff? Trey blinked. Can I? Miguel reached under his desk, handed him a fresh pair of gloves. You already are. Word spread. Miguel didn't just fix things, he taught others to fix them. He handed out tools, knowledge, responsibility. Slowly, quietly, he created a floor-level network of what people jokingly started calling the gearkeepers. They weren't supervisors. They weren't assigned. But people came to them. When a safety light flickered, they found a gearkeeper. When a strap was worn, they didn't log a ticket, they found someone trained to see it. Even the floor language changed. Not hotel management, but let's go fix it. Nathaniel saw the change like a slow tide rolling in. He visited one of the newer warehouses, this one in Charlotte. As he walked the floor, someone tapped his arm and said, If you're looking for the fix crew, check by the break room, they're replacing a warped rack. They? Nathaniel asked. Yeah. The gearkeepers. It wasn't even official policy. And somehow, that made it more powerful. Back in Boston, Nathaniel walked into Miguel's office and saw Trey pinning something to the wall, a sketch of a conveyor belt with colored annotations. Miguel looked up. Trey's been reworking the whole pick line process. Says he's got a way to reduce wasted steps by about 15%. Trey mumbled. It's not done. Nathaniel studied the diagram. You drew this? Trey shifted uncomfortably. Yeah. Nathaniel smiled. You ever thought about engineering? Trey laughed. Nah. That's for smart kids. Miguel stood. You are one. There was no argument in his tone. Just certainty. And Trey didn't laugh again. That night, Miguel and Nathaniel sat on a shipping bay, legs dangling like two boys too old to swing them, too tired not to. You're building something, Nathaniel said. Miguel nodded. Yeah. But it's not mine. What do you mean? Miguel watched the trucks load in the distance. I'm just passing it forward. Someone taught me to care when no one's watching. Now I'm just trying to make sure someone else does too. Nathaniel looked down at his hands. The calluses from his month on the floor had faded, but he still flexed them sometimes, like he didn't want to forget. You think that's enough? He asked. Just teaching the next? Miguel turned to him. What else is there? Nathaniel sat in his corner office a few nights later, the city lights sprawled behind him like a blinking constellation. He opened his notebook, the old one. He flipped past the business models, the hiring notes, the scribbled numbers from a time when every cent mattered. He landed on the page with Miguel's name. And beneath it he wrote, Legacy isn't built. It's handed off. The next morning, he called a meeting. Executive level. No slides. No charts. He stood at the front, no podium, no script, and said, I'm stepping back. Gasps. Murmurs. Confusion. I'm not resigning. I'm just repositioning. I'll be moving into a new role, founder in residence. Advisory only. Day-to-day operations will be passed down to a council formed from within. More silence. And then, I've spent years chasing scale. Now I want to chase substance. I want to see if what we've built holds without me at the center. He let it land. Then added, and if you need someone to show you how, ask Miguel. That afternoon, Miguel found him by the freight elevator, leaning on the railing, looking almost uncertain. You sure about this? Miguel asked. Nathaniel smiled. For the first time in a long time, yeah. Miguel didn't like the new nameplate. Miguel B. Ramirez, Director of Floor Culture and Safety Operations. It was heavy, literally, engraved in brushed steel, and metaphorically, like it belonged to someone who used big words in investor meetings. He tried to hide it behind a mug of pens. By noon, someone had turned it back around. Trey, probably. The kid had started showing up early. Staying late. Asking questions not just about tools, but people, who worked well together, who got quiet when the wrong person entered a room, who was carrying more than just boxes. You ever think you're being watched? Trey asked one afternoon, adjusting a jammed brake on a supply cart. Miguel didn't look up. I'm in a glass office, Trey. No, I mean like, all the time. Like people waiting to see what you do next. Miguel finished tightening the bolt, sat back on his heels. Yeah. I feel it. Trey nodded, quiet. Then, does it ever mess with your head? Miguel gave him a look. Every day. That night, Miguel stayed late. The building had its own hum after hours, a kind of low breathing, machinery settling into sleep. He walked the aisles alone, flashlight in hand, checking chords, noting floor wear, tapping a loose panel here or there. He stopped by the break room. On the table, a printed flyer. Miguel's Monday. Tips. Fixes. Floor wisdom. He hadn't made it. Someone else had. He read the bullet points. Check cables under carts. Look for fray marks. Never leave plastic wrap near vents. If it feels off, speak up. Doesn't have to break to matter. At the bottom, in sharp, you don't need permission to care. Miguel sat down slowly, flyer still in hand. He hadn't realized he was becoming an idea. The next day, a worker from the Chicago location emailed him directly. Subject: just wanted to say thanks. Body: we never had anyone talk to us like people. It's different now. My little sister wants to work here next year. That means something. Miguel stared at the message for a long while. Then wrote back. Thank you. We're just getting started. That same afternoon, Nathaniel stopped by. No meeting. No agenda. Just 2 coffees in hand and a tired smile. Trey's working on a prototype for a modular lift, he said, handing Miguel the cup. Says he wants to test it next week. Miguel chuckled. He's got more ideas than patience. That's the beginning of leadership, Nathaniel said. You remember that phase? Miguel shook his head. Still feels like I'm in it. Nathaniel leaned against the desk. People are starting to believe in you. Miguel looked down. I know. That's the part that scares me. Why? Because belief doesn't need proof. Just faith. And I'm a man who likes fixing tangible things. Nathaniel sipped his coffee, thoughtful. Maybe the best leaders don't ask people to believe in them, Miguel. Maybe they just give people permission to believe in themselves. That night, Miguel took the nameplate off his desk. Not to hide it. He hung it on the wall, next to the whiteboard, where the tools and warnings lived. A reminder not of status, but of service. He wrote underneath it in thick black marker. A title doesn't make you a leader. But you can be one anyway. It happened fast. A shelving unit collapsed in Section 4C, 4 pallets high, overloaded with spring stock no one had relogged after the last shipment. One worker was pinned. Another got clipped running to help. Broken ankle. Dislocated shoulder. Nothing fatal. But it could have been. The air went sharp. Cold. Thick with questions. Within minutes, the site manager filed the emergency report. Corporate called in a safety audit. HR started whispering about liability. Lawyers used words like exposure and precedent. And Miguel? Miguel walked straight to the floor. He didn't say much at first. He crouched next to the spill, gloves on, examining the break pattern in the racking, tracing it like a fault line. He pulled up the last 2 weeks of reports. And there it was, buried halfway down Trey's Tuesday notes. Pallet load feels uneven in 4C. Might be stacking error. No follow-up. No initials. No signature. Miguel's chest tightened. That was his system. His chain. And something had slipped through. Nathaniel arrived by noon. He didn't call ahead. Didn't wear the coat or the calm CO face. Just jeans, boots, and that same hard look he used to wear when the trucks ran late and there were only 3 hands on deck. Miguel met him at the back entrance. I missed it, Miguel said before Nathaniel could speak. The note was there. Trey flagged it. Nathaniel's voice was even. You can't catch everything. But I said we could, Miguel snapped. I told people this system worked. That we were watching. Nathaniel looked him square in the face. You were. And that's why no one died. Miguel looked down. It still failed. No, Nathaniel said quietly. It cracked. That's different. What matters is what we do now. The next day, Miguel stood in front of every shift team, one by one. No PR script. No polished statement. Just truth. We missed something. That's on me. He paused. But this system only works if you use it all the way. If you see something, and you flag it, and no one follows up, say it again. Loud. He held up Trey's note. This right here? It could have saved someone's foot. It almost did. But there was no signature. No one followed up. That's not on Trey. That's on us. He looked around the room. You don't need a title to speak up twice. That night, Trey sat across from Miguel in the break room, picking at a microwaved burrito. I should have said something, he mumbled. I mean, I wrote it down, but I should have, told somebody. Called it out. Miguel shook his head. You did enough. You saw it. You said it. But I didn't push. Miguel leaned forward. You think I always pushed? I spent years fixing things quietly. Not saying anything when people skipped steps. Because I thought being right was enough. He exhaled. Now I know it isn't. The audit results came back in 4 days. Negligence was ruled out. The failure came down to a combination of factors: bad weather delaying load checks, a mislabeled stack, a scheduling gap during off-hours rotation. No one person was to blame. But the system needed improvement. Instead of burying the incident, Miguel did something unheard of. He hosted a company-wide call and shared the entire report. No legal filter. No euphemisms. Here's what happened. Here's what we learned. And here's how we fix it. The response was instant. Emails. Messages. Workers from 6 other sites sent in photos of similar hazards they'd never spoken up about. Not because they didn't see them, but because they never thought they'd be heard. Now they knew they would. Later that week, Nathaniel pulled Miguel aside in the hallway. You know, he said, when the board hears about this, they're going to ask why we made it public. Miguel raised an eyebrow. You want me to walk it back? Nathaniel grinned. Hell no. I'm going to tell them what you just proved. Miguel waited. That leadership, Nathaniel said, isn't about being flawless. It's about being accountable. Loudly. Publicly. Without needing a pat on the back. The shelving unit in 4C was never rebuilt the same way. They left a small corner open, clear of product, and bolted a plaque to the floor. Not a memorial. Not a warning. Just a reminder. A single voice can hold up more than you think. And underneath, in Sharpit, Trey had written. Say it again. Loud. Miguel left it there. The offer came in a white envelope, hand-delivered. Not from HR. Not from Nathaniel. From the board. Director of National Operations. A 6-figure salary. Relocation package. Executive level. Corner office in Chicago. The kind of job they usually offer to men in polished shoes and muted ties. Not warehouse lifers with calloused hands and too many rolled-up sleeves. Miguel read the letter twice. Then folded it neatly and slid it into the drawer beneath his toolbox. He didn't tell anyone. Not right away. Instead, he walked the floor. Watched a new hire, Tina, redirect a forklift route after noticing a loose wheel on a cart. No one told her to. She just did. He watched Trey walk 2 temps through the audit checklist, patient, clear, confident. He paused by section 4C, where the floor plaque still gleamed under the overheads. Someone had added a sticky note beside it. We speak up or we shut down. No name. No explanation. But everyone knew what it meant. That night, Nathaniel found Miguel sitting on the loading dock again, feet swinging over the edge like the weight of the company was hanging off his boots. You read it? Nathaniel asked. Miguel nodded. It's a good offer. You earned it. Silence passed between them. Then Miguel said, If I leave, does it all fall apart? Nathaniel shook his head. No. Because it was never built on you. It was built through you. Miguel looked out at the parking lot. I used to think leadership was about being the strongest one in the room. And now? Nathaniel asked. Miguel smiled, just barely. Now I think it's about knowing when to leave the room and trust they'll keep the lights on. He made his decision quietly. No announcement. No farewell tour. He called the board. Declined the offer. Why? One of them asked. Miguel just said, Because I'm not done building. 2 weeks later, he took a step sideways, not up. Moved into a new role, Director of Field Training and Mentorship. Half his time on the road. Half still on the floor. He didn't want the corner office. He wanted corners, the back ones where mistakes get swept, where the quiet workers live. And more importantly, he wanted to find the next Trey. The next voice that needed space. The next fix no one else would notice. The day he left for his first road rotation, Trey walked him out. Miguel tossed his bag in the trunk of a company van, beat up, dented, but his name was now stenciled on the side. You nervous? Trey asked. Miguel grinned. A little. You. Trey shrugged. Kinda feels like you're handing me the keys. You already had 'em. Miguel said. You just didn't know it. He held out his hand. Trey didn't shake it. He hugged him. Quick, tight, then let go like nothing happened. Miguel smiled. Then drove away. A month later, in a warehouse 2 states over, a worker named Alicia stood in front of a group of temps. She held up a screwdriver and said, Here's how you check for wheel drag. And here's what to do if your supervisor ignores the problem. Someone raised a hand. Wait, won't that get us in trouble? Alicia just smiled. Not anymore. And in the back of the room, Miguel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, letting her speak. Because she didn't need his voice. She had her own. Back in Boston, Nathaniel walked the floor alone one afternoon. The new floors gleamed. The shelving was bolted to reinforced tracks. The whiteboards were full. But what struck him most were the conversations. Quiet ones at break tables. Quick exchanges by the lockers. Phrases like, Let's flag that. Does this feel right to you? Go ask Trey, he'll show you. The system didn't run on algorithms anymore. It ran on belief. Belief in each other. And Nathaniel? He finally let himself leave the clipboard behind. He stood by the time clock on his way out. The same machine where Miguel had once clocked in, unnoticed. Where change began not with a speech or a memo, but with a man choosing to fix what he didn't break. Nathaniel looked at the clock, then out across the floor. And he smiled. Because in a world full of titles, he had found something better. A warehouse held together not by profit or pressure, but by people who gave a damn. When no one was watching,